Welcome to the early participants. We'll give it a few minutes to get started, but thank you for joining. Thank you all for joining the ALAT TST webinar. We're going to just give it a couple minutes for allow people to sign in who are a little bit late. We'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Thank you for your patience. Okay, let's get started then. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Hello and welcome. My name is Michael Schachter. I'm a director of product marketing at ALAT. And in today's TST, or Telco Security Trends webinar, we'll be presenting the results of our recent worldwide survey of smartphone owners, in which we attempted to gauge their cybersecurity posture, how vulnerable they feel, what steps they take to protect themselves, and most importantly for you, how they view the potential role of communication or internet service providers, and we'll use the term CSP and ISP pretty much interchangeably in this important arena. And finally, getting to the business side, or how can security improve telco business results, We try to understand from them how security impacts their customer satisfaction, as shown by how it impacts their willingness to spend for security, their motivation to join a particular service provider, and to remain with that service provider based on how they feel about their own security in that setting. So joining me today are Stephen Saw, who is a director at Coleman Parks Research, and my colleague Vikram Singh, who is a cybersecurity marketing director with Allot, and he has a lot of customer-facing experience. So Stephen will be presenting the highlights of the survey, which Coleman Parks conducted anonymously on behalf of Allot, so nobody knew that we were asking the questions. And Stephen will present the methodology that we used, the key findings, and his perspective on some of the interesting results. And Vikram, as I said, who has a lot of customer and telco experience, will add from what he has seen and heard from his meetings with CSPs. So sort of sharing their perspective on how security can and may impact them from the business perspective. That is the focus actually of this webinar. So before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll share a link with you afterwards, and you can come back and listen to it, and you can also share it with colleagues who might not have been able to join. The survey results are in a full TST report that has a more in-depth analysis of all the survey findings, and that will be shared with you as well. And feel free to share that, of course, with your colleagues, and that will kind of, in this webinar, we'll be focusing on some of the highlights from that report, but the report will give you a more full exposure to the survey and the results. We invite you to send comments and ask questions. Please use the Q&A box from the Zoom toolbar. We will try to answer them probably during or more likely right at the end of the webinar. And if we don't get to it because of time, we'll follow up by email, but please feel free to ask questions. And finally, there will be a couple of poll questions during the webinar so that we can make sure we know who you are and also to understand your perspective, which will in effect give us the other side of the coin, because we asked the survey questions to your customers, the consumers, and this will be a chance for you to give kind of your opinion on some of the topics as well. So let me share the agenda with you. We're going to go through, this was the introduction, and we'll have the survey overview and key findings from Stephen. We'll get the view from the field from Vikram, and then I'll try and summarize and address any questions that you may have asked. And as I like to do before we get started, if you could be so kind as to tell us something about yourselves. Here is the first poll question, which I hope you see. And the question is, do you work for either an ISP who's doing fixed or fixed wireless, a pure mobile, a converged, or an enterprise selling to ISP? And potentially some of you may work for other organizations altogether. But it would be good to have a good sense of who's out there. So if you could take a second to answer, about half of you have, so we'll give it another minute or so. I encourage you all to participate. And I think we've got just about everybody. So I will end the poll and share the results with you. Here we go. Okay, so about a third are various kinds of ISP CSPs. 42% are enterprises selling into the ISP market, and 26% are others. So I need to come up with another category to figure out who's out there, but thank you. And the next kind of follow-up question is, excuse me, given that you work for whatever of those organizations you work for, can you describe your role? Do you not work for the ISP? Are you in engineering, more in networking, marketing, operations, security, or some other ISP role? Okay, I will end the poll and share the results. So it's a little bit curious because the number of people not working for an ISP dropped to 10%. And then within the ISP, it's a nice distribution between engineering, networking, marketing, operations, security, and other roles. And that's fine. I think the security content of this webinar will very much apply to all of you. So I think without further ado, I will turn over the presenting to Stephen, who will take us through the survey. Stephen, over to you, and let me know when to move the slide forward.
Thank you. A good evening and a good morning to all the attendees. And thanks a lot for, well, thank you to a lot for inviting me to today's webinar. As Michael said, Common Parks, we're an independent market research company, and we've been working with a lot for a few years now, building up a lot of survey data for CSPs and their customers. So we're really excited to present today's findings. We have done a few of these before, so you probably recognize our name. I think about March last year, we did a consumer survey. So what I'll do is I'll just introduce the survey parameters for this year and also what's different. Michael, if you could switch to the next screen. So what's different this year is, well, we've gone for a global survey. We've included France, and we've nearly doubled the size of the respondent base. So we've got around 1,000 consumers in the UK, 2,000 in the US, Australia, 1,000, Canada, France, Germany, and Japan. France was included this year, and the previous survey was conducted in March. So we've managed to track some of the trends just to see how they're moving. If you go to the next slide, please. And what else is different this year as well is we've got a lot more information about the audience itself. So we obviously have age and gender, but now we know which CSP they're a customer of. And you can see there's a high representation globally. There's probably a few there that are local to you or you work for one of the CSPs. We've also got a good mix of device plans and number of mobile phones in the household. If you move to the next slide. And what else is different is we've looked at data usage this year. So, and this helps us determine and segment the audience into various different groups based on how many apps they have and how they use their phone and the kind of data they hold in their phone. And also concerns about losing that data as well. So we're able to group consumers into heavy, medium, and light users. And that's and with all these parameters, or this audience profile, should I say, we're able to look at the data in very different angles and look at the stories that are coming through. And there's some very powerful insights this time around. Next slide, please. I think to set the scene, I think there's you can see here on the left-hand side the proportion of consumers who believe they have been a victim of a cyber attack. So these are those who are aware versus those who are not aware. And I think we know in reality there's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of those who are not aware. Some of them have managed to be a victim without realizing, and others are certain. So there's a mixed bag of around 2/3 say they're not a victim. 15% say they have been affected and they've suffered negative consequences, and around 17% have said, "Yep, I was a victim of a cyber attack, but I don't think I had any negative consequences." So cyber attacks are occurring, and also looking at the proportion that have switched CSPs in the last 3 years, we can see that most of them have switched. Around 44% have switched in the last 3 years. So you know there is a high degree of moving around and trying out different services. Next slide, please.
So just before the next slide, and before we start disclosing kind of what the consumers thought and said. And as you know, a lot of the questions were around, built-in security, not insecurity, but built-in security as a potential offering from the CSP or ISP. And so we'd like to ask you what you think would be the interest among your customers in getting that kind of zero-touch network-based security solution where your pipes were essentially protecting the end user and they wouldn't have to install anything. Is that something that they would be very interested in, slightly interested in, not much at all, or not something that anyone's looking for? Do they feel that they're in good hands without such a solution? So just kind of interesting to hear what you guys think about this, before we present the findings. Don't be bashful. There are no right answers or wrong answers. Okay, I'll give it one more little push, and here we go. Okay, so I think this is interesting. I will share the results with you. It's pretty evenly divided, although I guess excellent got nearly half. But everyone seems to think that there will be interest in that kind of a solution. Nobody said that there's no interest or that very few will be interested. So that's, I think, a good background for this survey. And now we will move on to the next slide.
Thank you. Okay, so let's look at why security is good for telco business.
Okay, here
next
we
slide,
go.
please.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into the results now, and I'm just going to introduce the slide to you. So every slide is the same in terms of layout. At the very bottom of the slide, starting there, you can see the various size of the audience groups by country, and also by year. So, and if you look at the chart, you have a yellow bar and a blue bar. So the blue bar is the survey that we did March or nearly this time last year. The yellow bar results are the ones that we did at the end of last year. So those are the freshest responses. And then you can also see the question as well that was asked at the bottom as well. Now, this is a really interesting slide because it really sets the scene for cybersecurity on a global scale and its importance to smartphone users. You can see across each of the countries that we've surveyed that there's been a positive shift upwards in terms of perceived importance when it comes to protecting themselves, the smartphone users themselves, from cyber attacks. So this is an awareness, and you can see, especially in the likes of Germany, there's been a significant jump there by about 22% of smartphone users. So consumers are more savvy, they're understanding that they can be protected by cybersecurity, and therefore their perception is that it's very important to them. And that's nearly 9 in 10 that are entering into an agreement with a CSP. Thank you. The next question we asked then is, so would you be likely to switch to a new mobile service provider if they offered a security service? And I think it's also worth mentioning that every time we do these surveys, we always get a fresh pool of respondents. So we didn't ask exactly the same person in March, the same questions in November. So there's a fresh pool of respondents, and that gives a very sort of fair, accurate read, I guess, if you're comparing two different waves. So the survey hasn't, encouraged them to be more aware of security. So fresh eyes, and what you can see here is that willingness to switch has increased for nearly all markets globally. Obviously, we haven't got the data for France, but we'll be interested to see how that is in last year. But I think you can see the general trend is that it's jumped from about 70-odd%, 75%, up to the sort of nearly 80%. So And this doesn't necessarily mean they're going to switch. If you look at the actual wording of the question, probably switch, would definitely switch. It's more of an appetite. You have to look at this in a certain way, which is there's an appetite now for when consumers go to CSPs to understand, do they offer better security solutions? So upward trend in terms of its importance, and also this likelihood of switching, this appetite for better security services.
So I would just, throw in there, and this is, probably not anything that's new for you, and perhaps a little bit of preaching to the choir, but in today's, very saturated market, an appetite to switch is obviously something of concern. And so if security offerings are something that the market is looking for, then it's something to think seriously about offering the market. Yeah.
Thank you. Next slide. Now, this is where we get some interesting findings. And if you recall at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned how we've collected different data points on consumers. So we're going to start to see how results vary by different consumer groups. Now, this is a really interesting question, which is we asked all smartphone users if they have switched providers because of security, what were the main reasons for choosing a different mobile provider? And 13% have said that they have switched for better security, but that jumps nearly double for those who have experienced a cyber attack. So what we're seeing is that when we look at the data, is that those who have been a victim of a cyber attack, 30 are 6 times more likely to switch to a CSP with better security. Now, and what's quite, I guess we saw the number of those who have experienced a cyber attack. The number of cyber attacks is only going to increase. So therefore, this sort of likelihood to switch is probably going to increase as well.
So yeah, it's I mean, it's a very intuitively, it makes sense, right? If you've been burned, you're going to be more. And I think, the underlying point that Stephen mentioned here, which is that cyber attacks, as we all know, are just on the rise, everywhere across every, vector and segment and market and so on. So your customer base is increasingly going to be people who have had some kind of negative cyber experience. And so again, the appetite or the need for you to help protect them is just growing. So let me just throw in one more poll question here, if I may, and that is the following. In terms of, so Stephen just said, there's a lot of people out there, and it's a growing number who experience attacks. You as the CSP who are providing the online connectivity, which brings all kinds of fun experiences, but is also the conduit for these attacks. What do you think your customers are most worried about in terms of cyber threats? Is it phishing attacks that will lead to credential theft? Are they most worried about children reaching inappropriate content? The fact that they've got more and more IoT devices in their houses or offices that are not very securable, or that they're just worried about getting, infected by something that's nasty. So very curious to see your perception of your customer base, essentially. Okay, give it just another second or two. And okay, so this is, I think, quite interesting and instructive. 71% of you felt that the biggest concern out there is credential theft, through phishing attacks. And that makes a lot of sense because that kind of has the longest lasting or deepest, widest spreading impact. IoT devices, if they get hacked, so you disconnect them, you throw them out, I don't know. But yeah, if your credentials are taken, and this is a general consumer question, right? Certainly your small business customers would potentially be even more worried about that because it can actually put them out of business. So thank you for sharing that outlook. And we will go on to the next slide.
Thank you. Every year we also track willingness to pay for better security. And as you can see here that we've asked it this year compared it to last year. The key question we asked is how much would you be willing to pay per month for your mobile service provider for a solution on a single mobile device that would give you security against all cyber concerns. And we've worked out that it's roughly around $3 globally. And you can see in some markets that's increased, in others it might have dipped a little, but the value is still high. So that again we've seen this importance has increased, the willingness to switch has increased, and there's even an appetite's increased as well, and there's even this propensity or this willingness to actually spend a bit more to get the right security solution to protect them from various cyber attacks. So positive stuff, and also a revenue opportunity if you want to as well. So and then looking at the value that smartphone customers or customers of CSPs, how much value they apply to pre-installed security solutions. Simple scale, nice and balanced. We gave them 1, not valuable at all the way up to 5, which is in the dark blue, to extremely valuable. So they could give us a fair and honest answer when taking part. And you can see that when looking at all data users, you have around 78% or 8 and 10% saying it is pre-installed security is valuable. But what else is interesting as well is that dark blue line as well. So, and those are respondents who say, or customers who say extremely valuable, 5 out of 5 on a scale, which is, which a lot of people don't really want to say, except unless you're a heavy data user. So the more data you have on your device, the more sensitive it becomes. The perceived value increases in strength quite significantly.
Okay. And there was one question about the switching that we talked about, that whether there were other reasons besides security for switching, and certainly there were, and that we go into more detail in the TST report, which you'll be getting. But the point that Stephen brought up was that 13% of the people who switched reported that they switched because the new provider had better security. So that's certainly not the highest percentage, but it's a significant percentage. And then, if you do the math, obviously that translates into, significant churn over security issues. So something to keep track of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we then asked customers, quite simply, how important is having a security app pre-installed on your mobile at the point of purchase, at the point of sale. And again, we can see a scale at the bottom, a balanced scale, so we can get honest answers from not at all important to very important. And looking at all users or all smartphone users, 8 and 10 say pre-install security at the point of sale is important. So that's a huge opportunity. We've already seen that there's a willingness to spend more and maybe even switch. And therefore pre-installed security at the point of sale, it makes sense that that's an important discussion that needs to be had.
And I don't know about, you as end users and not as CSPs, but I've never heard that offered. So there's the appetite that Stephen says the survey has uncovered, and I think that we're missing a potential early upsell, because it's generally not offered, and if it's offered, it's only it's not a pre-installed solution. It's a we work with an endpoint provider. Here's a link. You're welcome to go through the whole process of going through the link, downloading, trying to install, trying to configure, trying to update, trying to give the correct authorities to the application, and so on. And yet 8 out of 10 say it's very important or important to varying degrees. So there's an opportunity there as well.
So there's the opportunity we just talked about. Now we asked when you bought or switched your mobile phone, were you offered any of the following? You can see, so 8 and 10 want to talk about cybersecurity apps at the point of sale and included in their bundle, for example, but only 2 and 10 are actually being offered that. So the most obvious, the most prevalent services, screen case protection, which everyone drops their phone and so forth, and that makes sense, and then phone insurance as well. But cyber protection is it's only asked to 2 in 10 customers. So that is a revenue opportunity for CSPs to take hold of.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next slide, please. What else we found as well is that, and you can see various splits of data here across the chart, is we ask respondents how more or less likely are you to buy additional products or services from a mobile provider that has a security app to stop cyber attacks or phishing, malware, and similar threats pre-installed on all its products. So 68% have said I would be willing to buy more services from that particular CSPs. So, and that can be looked at as loyalty. They're going to be more loyal to them. They're going to continue to buy more services from them. From a CSP point of view, it's locking in those customers. So once they're with you, you've attracted them in, the bundle options they have available are in front of them. One has pre-installed security, etc., put in, and they choose that. They're more likely then to have a relationship with that CSP and buy more services and products from them. So a really strong driver for offering that as a part of your bundle. And again, you can see that this is a trend which doesn't apply to just certain age groups. It's a trend that spreads across all age groups on the right-hand side. And even with those who have been a victim of a cyber attack, you can see there's slightly a few more, as you'd expect. Those who have had who've suffered a negative consequence of a cyber attack is 74% said they would be willing to buy more products and services. And again, with this heavy data user as well. So more sensitive data, more data usage, they're willing to get locked in to a relationship with a CSP and buy more services from them. So some really interesting findings here from and some big numbers as well, big percentages of smartphone users. So encouraging stuff.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Then we've asked question around importance. Now, how important is being protected on your mobile phone from cyber attacks, phishing, malware, and other threats? And we've asked respondents previously, how protected do you feel? And those who find it security is important. So 88% are saying security protection is important, but 77% said they feel protected. So there is a gap between importance and feeling protected, and that's a gap of around 11%. So we can look into that. There's a bit of art and science when it comes to interpreting these results. The science is telling us that there's a significant gap of around 11% globally between being protected and wanting to be protected. So we can look at that and play the art with the interpretation and say, CSPs, you could potentially lose around 1 in 10 customers. We've seen it's important. There's an appetite for security. There's cyber attacks are on the increase. And therefore, if taking all that into account, if 10% feel like they're not getting what they want from a security point of view, then that is a risk of a proportion of customers that could potentially switch. So a good way of looking at the data to kind of draw out that insight.
Yeah, and I would argue that, I mean, first of all, 11% might not sound like a big number, but if you've got, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million customers, then 11% is suddenly a lot of revenue. But that's also perhaps, and it's appropriate, but it's the gap is sort of the tip of the iceberg, or a conservative analysis, because the 77% who feel protected may not actually be sufficiently protected. And so they may, in fact, find themselves down the road victims of cyber attack that got through whatever, kind of protection they had in place. And so, as we saw earlier, they might themselves be then in the future, despite having felt protected, ending up in that looking elsewhere for protection. So, but even just the 11% is significant business potential that you wouldn't want to lose. So thank you very much, Stephen, for these highlights. And again, we will be sending you the full TST report, but we have another perspective from my colleague Vikram, who, as I said, has been to the market, has talked to the CSPs, has talked to the ISPs, and knows the consumer perspective as well. And just a quick explanation of the term CCaaS, that's security as a service. And Vikram will go into that. And that is part of the Allot offering, selling to the CSPs, the ability to then offer security as a service, as a built-in service for the end users. So over to you, Vikram.
Thank you so much, Michael. Glad to be here. So just to double click on a bit of the context that I'm going to share. So I represent the marketing team from our North American region. So I support partners. When I say partners, mean our telecom partners across North America. So today I'm going to share the perspective of how some of the leading telcos in the world are looking at security. What's changing? Security has been in the marketplace for quite a bit of time now. But there's a fundamental shift happened, primarily driven by consumer needs. And I believe, Stephen shared some amazing data about how customers are viewing security, how are the different trends. But how does that now leverage the decision-making process for the telcos and how they are thinking? So I'm going to shed some light there. Michael, you can move on to the next slide. So the first thing I want to share with your team is, what is the main need? So why they're looking at security in such a strategic manner now. Because the key tenet for security initially was, yeah, we have an application-based security, there's an endpoint you can download, or there's some other levels of security solutions available somewhere in their portfolio. But now we see a fundamental shift where security is becoming a key differentiator. And one of the main reasons why is because if you look at, to simplify, look at the network promise coming from the telco. We've been talking about coverage, speed, and reliability for many, many years. And that is where telcos have usually competed with in terms of value proposition to their end customers. I provide end-to-end coverage, very important specifically in North America, but now almost everyone is doing it. Speed was really a big differentiator, especially in the early 4G era. No longer as much because everybody seems to have a very good speed. Specifically, once you cross a threshold, it doesn't matter that much. It is relevant, but not as much as it used to be. And of course, we want reliable networks. Now, security is being I would say the new kid on the block, but it's actually I'm seeing is the fourth pillar of network promise. Why? Number one, it's a core solution, meaning everybody needs it. There are many value-added services just for the context available in the market. For example, myself, I'm from Toronto. I see some partners offering Disney, some partners offering Spotify. The challenge there is that that service, even though valuable, would be valuable to a niche of customers, a small subset of customers. Security is like, you're getting clean water to your home. If you have internet on your phone, you need security. So that is why now our partners are leveraging security as one of the key differentiators when they're going to market. And they also understand there's a lot of maturity in the market that we see. It is no longer just about having one secure solution somewhere on your website. Our partners realize that security, especially, it's a multitude of solutions, primarily driven by network-based security. Now, I'm not going to use this term loosely. What network-based security, what CCAS really means, because once we establish the fact that our partners ask that no, security is part of our differentiation message, what kind of solution we would need? Michael, you can move to the next slide. You'll just see what I mean by security as a service. The next one, Michael. Yes. So as I was just talking about that, security has existed in the marketplace, I would say more than a decade. We have been offered by our partners, our telecom partners in North America, specifically on behalf of whom I speak, based on my experience. But what now they're looking for when they're making this part of their strategic differentiation, they're looking for a solution which is network native, which is device agnostic, and zero touch. There's a lot to unpack here. So we'll touch the treetops and simplify what it actually means. So when you talk about network native, meaning like I've simplified into what the value is for the telco and what's for the end user. Ultimately, it's the part of the same value proposition. It's just simplified to and understand what it actually means to me as a consumer and someone as if I'm a telco. Network native first and foremost means it's part of the network promise. It comes with the network. You don't have to install, you don't have to specifically download any other additional app. They're looking for something which is part of the network. They might also offer some additional solutions, some endpoints. As I said, telcos understand that security in certain ways, it will be multiple solutions. But what is the primary? What is the bedrock security solution that our partners are looking for? So that is why network native is important to them. And also because the key tenet for network native is it's network grade. And what I mean by that is the same level of network graded or rated or tested solution that you're offering to your customers. So that we go through a ton of internal testing and compliance to make sure that it's at power. And also it's unique and distinguished. My experience about how I offer security to my customers is uniquely mine. And that is part of the differentiation messaging that I see in the field. To the end user, the key benefit of network native is it just works out of the box. I don't have to install, I don't have to manage anything. And it's usually part of my package, whether I'm a bundled customers or I'm using this, I might have multiple plans or multiple people using the service from the telco in my family. So it could be part of my existing package. I don't need to do anything additional from my end. It just works seamlessly. The second core tenet, device agnostic. Why this is such an important thing for the telco. And this is something I see a lot in the field today because different devices, different platforms has different experiences. And we need security which is uniform across the board. Just like the promise of the network, like the performance of the network should not change if I have an Android or an iPhone or the age of my device to a large extent. Similarly, when I offer security as a telco, I'm looking at that it should be consistent. And also it should not be tied to a third party app store and controlled completely by the telco. That's a subtle but important point there. There's a whole gamut of exercise which goes through getting your applications approved, being managed in service, different iOS updates, for example. The telecom partners, they want to have end-to-end control because they want to create that same brand experience for the customers. So not necessarily need to go through a ton of applications and these platforms and Apple app stores and Google Play stores, is a big plus for them. On the same note, device agnostic has also really strong benefits for the end user specifically. It doesn't matter which platform you are, as I just mentioned. It doesn't matter the age or type of device. There's still challenges in certain areas with security where download an app and you can see a big impact to your battery life or your user experience. There is absolutely no challenge when it comes to device agnostic. And the final part, zero touch. Zero touch basically means you don't have to do anything. It just works seamlessly. You don't have to install or manage an app, just to clarify. Why this is so important for the telco. As Michael was talking about, you have millions, in some cases here in North America, you have tens of millions, over 100 million customers. How easy it's for that security solution to deploy. You don't want to be a telco who rolls out a security product, and then you have hundreds and thousands, and in worst case scenario, millions of people calling you over the period of a year just to help you understand how to install it, how to manage it. No, it has to be seamless. It has to be touchless. And also it brings low cost of servicing. Just imagine how much amount of money a telco has to allocate just to service the call center operations or the support groups, who's going to manage it, provision it, support it, answer customer calls, just because you're not able to install an application. So that is why zero touch is extremely important for a telco. From the perspective, again, tying back to the earlier message, if they want to offer this as a strategic differentiator, if they want to offer it to everyone. And from end user, nothing beats ease of use. A teenager who has just starting off with a new package can use it the same way as someone who's 90 years old. They don't need to install and manage it. And one thing, this is turning into be kind of a big deal. Why? Because, for example, I'll use a real life example, like iOS updates are coming. And we know iPhone has been a little bit more aggressive about permissions and privacy. It takes so many more additional steps just to give permissions to install another app. So just having a solution part of the network is so important for the mass adoption of the solution for the CSP. So that is why you'll hear this term security as a service. It's not another app. I'll just emphasize it's actually part of the service. And these are some of the key tenets that I see in the field that our customers are looking for. Next one, Michael. Now, it all comes down to the ultimate ROI. How do you quantify that? We've been talking about, yes, security is extremely important to the end users. The need year on year is increasing, and it's a mirror image of how many times they are now interacting with incidents or while shopping or doing anything else, and they are getting those instances where they feel threatened by some kind of a scam or some kind of a malicious element who's trying to steal the data. Now, not to go too deep into that part, I think we've covered in rich detail about the need of it. But ultimately, if a telco is making these huge bets, investments, making this part of their core offering, how do they see they're going to monetize it, or the ultimate ROI of this project? So I've broken this up into two key pillars. I would say two ways of looking into it. Of course, one is long-term roadmap, and the other part is something you can take to the bank every year to simplify it. First and foremost, product differentiation. Now, this is getting very challenging, specifically in the North American market, because everybody seems to offer a similar plan, a similar data bucket, similar speeds, and similar value. It's just sometimes very challenging for them to differentiate. So security has the ability to offer something new to their customers across any price plans, or which goes across their existing structures, for example, their existing plans, or the new bundles they want to create for their customers. So it's a very unique way of creating product differentiation. And one of the core tenets of CCaaS is that you can create a unique security user experience for your customer, because how seamless it is, it's exactly part of your brand. Same, because it's not tied to a third-party application. You can completely customize it and fine-tune it based on what your customer needs. So they interact with the same brand in the same way. The other part, if you look at the second point there, like I've categorized them in terms of impact to the bottom line, is incremental revenue. So not only just creates product differentiation, the side effect or positive side effect of that is incremental revenue. And that is primarily coming from two ways. One is the propensity for customers to upgrade to a bigger package or more premium package because now it also comes with security. We see that trend. And by the way, not to take names, you can do a quick search of the top players specifically from my market, North America, and you'll see a big variety of them are already starting to do that. The next, I would say, subset of incremental revenue is actually add-ons. There are certain packages which will come with securities bundle, and there's certain, I would say, budget plans where you can opt in. And Stephen shared an average about $3. That's exactly what we see here in North America as well. So that is a direct opportunity to monetize this value that they're providing to the customers. Few other things, net adds. Now, net adds see this specifically from the point of view, like, we saw a very interesting insight that the moment, if let's say I had a negative consequence of a cyber attack, my propensity to move to another partner or another telco who offers security goes many times over. It's multiple times higher propensity to move to them, keeping everything else constant. So that's why you'll see people who have been impacted, who are really curious about making sure that they're well protected. Those are the ones you can easily see the main drivers for the net adds, because they want to move to a telco who offers better security. Few other things. Customer retention is also very important. There was some data shared today. I would not go too deep there. I think Stephen did a fantastic job covering and slicing that data. And lastly, also about synergy. We've heard the terms SaaS, software as a service. Similarly, security as a service. You are not tied into those long-term, plans from a customer standpoint, and you can opt in for this service, or it's part of in most cases, and the best solution that we recommend is part of the bundle. At the same time, from a partner perspective or a telco perspective, it is a light solution, meaning you don't have to invest X number of CapEx dollars to make it happen all the time. If you're already partnered with us, some other, and for example, I'm speaking for a lot, it usually comes as a part of an offering. So it has a lot of synergy from an ROI perspective as well, specifically if you're from the DPI world. So that is how it ties some of the key ways in which our partners are looking at the overall value to the bottom line, and also, of course, differentiation and value they're sharing with the customer and passing it on from a security standpoint. Those are some of the main points I wanted to cover today. Back to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Vikram. And so, we heard from Vikram what he has been hearing from prospects and customers alike. And we at Allot, we've got our ears and eyes open to the market, to your business. And in fact, we have crafted our security solution in what we believe is a unique way, taking advantage of this very, the network oriented, built-in zero-touch approach that Vikram emphasized people are looking for and are looking to provide. We see this solution as giving kind of the most comprehensive 360-degree, if you will, solution, in a kind of a holistic, all-encompassing. So we break it down into a bunch of different offerings and different products that match different potential needs of your customer base. Network Secure, kind of our flagship product, provides a range of threat protection and content filtering and more, and it's all from within the network. And as Vikram highlighted, it does have exactly that built-in, pre-installed, zero-touch. Just like, as we like to draw the analogy, just like when you open your faucet, the water comes to you clean and pure from the water utility. Your end users deserve clean and protected and pure network connectivity. They can, of course, go in and configure and fine tune, but they don't have to. From the second that they're activated, they're protected by your network automatically. Home Secure and Business Secure take that step and add another piece by installing a very small footprint client through the network onto the CPE, if it's the home router or the business router, but that's kind of the edge of the network, and that enables a sort of a more granular protection of the various devices that are in the home, connected to the home network or in the small business network, and gives also that same kind of full range of threat protection and content filtering, again, instantly, without any need to configure, but with the option to fine tune it. We also have something that we call IoT secure. As we mentioned, there is this, growing phenomenon of not very secure devices out there that people in their homes, be it the smart doorbells, the smart light bulbs, thermostats, refrigerators, and so on, which are inherently not very securable because they're kind of small, single-purpose, easy to hack and turn into kind of a botnet device. And then we also offer an endpoint solution that gives you added protection, or gives your customers protection for when they're not on your network. And so it is this 360-degree kind of holistic solution that we feel kind of checks all the boxes that we saw both from the customer survey and Vikram brought from your sort of peers in the industry. So just a couple of questions before I go into the summary. You heard a little bit, what we were hearing or what we were seeing, and I don't think I asked you what you think your end users would be willing to pay monthly. So we saw that there was an interest in getting it built in or in paying a little bit more to be protected, either from day one or as an upsell opportunity. How much do you think people would pay for this kind of a service? So it would be interesting to compare that to the results that we saw. Yeah, about half of you have answered. So if we could get a little bit more results, that would be a little bit more statistically valid. Okay, I'll give it just another couple of seconds for those of you who are thinking about it, mulling it over. And here we go. So I will share the results, and yeah, 10% of you are sure that your customers would like to get it free of charge, and we have seen that as well. But 61% come in around where we heard the results as well, at $3. A little bit more would even see it at $6 or even $8. And so I think, we hear, and now you're also saying that there is an interesting business opportunity here. And then one last question before I go into the key takeaways. I just want to go back and revisit a question that I asked at the very beginning, just to see if, what we've seen and heard today has any impact on your feelings about this. So how strong do you think your end users would view a zero-touch network-based solution without needing any installation to become protected? And just curious to see how this compares to the earlier results of the poll. Okay, give it another 5 seconds. Okay, so I think I can share the results that we've had a good webinar, because we've shifted some of you up into the excellent and strong categories, and I think it's accurate. I think it's true, and it's an important message. There's a real need for it out there. It's being clearly expressed, and we're hearing also from telcos that they're looking for this kind of solution. So thank you for that. And now on to the key takeaways, and I'll try and do it quickly because we are running out of time. So here we go. So first of all, as Stephen said, there's a high awareness out there, and it's growing from our surveys over time, and we see it's clear. There's awareness, but a lot of people remain unprotected, and you'll see in the TST reports, there's a large percentage of people who don't know if they have security or not. They may have something and they don't even know about it. Finally, there is an expectation and a desire and an appetite, as Stephen said, for you guys to step up and provide this missing solution. And the consumers value it. They say that it's important in growing numbers, year over year, and they clearly say they're willing to pay for it. And finally, to finish with a short commercial, we've got a solution. You've got an opportunity. There's a market demand that's growing, and we've got a field-proven solution that does provide this kind of built-in from within the network solution. And we'd be happy to, give and share more details with you offline. We've got just 2 minutes here, and there's one interesting question, which is, how is this sense of security and the need shifting in the as the world moves to 5G? Is it raising it? Is it lowering it? Vikram, what do you hear out there in the field?
So fundamentally, I think 5G has led to a shift, and it is rapidly increasing the need of security. And we don't have much time. I'll give you a key reason why. Specifically for North America, you'll see an average bucket of customer data pool was somewhere sitting between 10 to 20 GB. So that was one big factor. The other thing was, with the advent of new 5G, we don't have a killer app yet, but what we see specifically in the market is all partners, when we talk about telcos, they're now launching 5G unlimited plans. So what's happening now for customers for the first time, they don't necessarily need to log into their home fixed Wi-Fi network and share the same network with another 25, 30 devices that are hooked up to the same network. So that fundamental shift in relying on your phone as a primary driver and not relying on some of the other parameters has driven the customers to the need of it. Number two, in general alone, with 5G speeds, your phones can do way more. You are able to rely on your little devices, a big change from 4G with unlimited plans that I just talked about. So that's awareness of needing security and the susceptibility to subscribe to or prefer a plan with security as bundled solution is a key driver for the customer. And where there's an opportunity, telcos, of course, wants to monetize it. And even though more than monetization, offer that value to the customers, because ultimately they want to not just acquire new customers, they want to retain them, grow them, and offer them value.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time. You are all invited to get in touch with us through emails, through the contact form on our website. You'll be getting the TST, the full detailed reports, and if questions arise, do not hesitate. We're here to answer your questions. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Vikram. And thank you for participating, everybody. I look forward to seeing you at our next TST webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.